welcome to our Q&A panel for What's a Hoya. This was for the skills building module or professional development module part of the What's a Hoya programming. And so what we're here basically to do is to highlight for students the piece of skills that you really need to gather is really just being comfortable asking questions and like putting yourself in the middle of situations to gain some experience, right? And not necessarily internship experience, just kind of life experience within this phase. So to start, I could introduce our panelists here. So we have Jackie Banks, who is our, long titles here, our Senior Assistant Director and Industry Advisor for the Creative Arts, Media, and Communications field. We have Elizabeth Schill with us, who's a manager and industry advisor for government, nonprofit, and education fields. We have Jody Schneiderman, who is an assistant director and advisor for the health sciences and technology fields. And then last but not least, we have Angie Newman, who is a career consultant with us at Georgetown and is also a 2020 Georgetown alum. So a little bit of differences in this space here where people can maybe answer questions differently depending on their interest area. Beth Harlan was planning on being here, but she had something to pop out. So I'll be kind of filling in for her in the career exploration space, as well as Angie can hop in on those questions as well. And I'm Maddie Gregory. I'm the assistant director for professional development for Georgetown College. All right, so if we feel good, we can just hop in. So a lot of the questions that popped up from the survey that were asked was a lot surrounding like, is this the right path for me? Am I doing the right things? What does career development even look like? And so when I was kind of looking through the questions to create these, one of the main things that popped up was this idea of what would you say is the first thing first year students should do in order to start their career journey, right? Like there was a lot of questions around where do I even start? Like how do I even start thinking about this? So I'm curious, Jackie, how would you maybe respond to like where to even start for first year students?
I mean, part of me just thinks like, look at what you've enjoyed doing in the past, like starting to find themes. Have you been the kind of person that enjoys bringing people together? Or do you enjoy being more active? I know it might seem small, but really just kind of thinking about what do you like and what do you enjoy? And I think finding those themes might get you in a space where you're thinking, okay, what does that look like in terms of career? And maybe that look brings you to like our major exploration guide on our homepage. Really, it's the small things. So I like a lot of reflection, I think, for first year.
Mm-hmm. Angie, would you add anything to that from your perspective as an alum?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I really echo what Jackie was saying. That was definitely part of my journey a few years ago as a first year student at Georgetown. I think that reflection is weirdly, or not weirdly, but may naturally feel weird to be the first step. I think a lot of times the Georgetown culture is no time to reflect, just go, go, go and plan for the next thing. But thinking about what resonates with you most, whether that's in the courses that you took in high school or the courses that you're in now, is a really important part. And kind of what Maddie touched on, where this is all about asking questions. I think, if you really enjoy a course from one of your professors and you come into their office hours and ask questions, that's a really good place to start too, just getting curious about things that resonate with you.
Awesome.
I just want to piggyback onto that if I can. Like, so that's, I mean, really like exploring your curiosities is like Jackie said, it's not a small thing, and kind of going along that line, like, how do you do that? So as Jackie said, one thing can be certainly like thinking about what you enjoy, but even thinking about like, what TV shows do you watch? Do you like Mythbusters? Well, maybe you like problem solving. Maybe you like more hands-on kind of things. What do you choose to read? So I always like the question, if you're in the airport, and well, that seems like a long time ago for some of us, but if you're in the airport and I gave you $5 to buy a magazine, like what magazine would you buy? Or where in the magazine? I tend to go towards the health and science section when I read The Week, and I particularly like the nutrition part of it. So really like exploring your curiosities and what you're choosing to read, what you're choosing to watch on TV. When you're in a psych class, is it the part on marketing persuasion that tends to get your attention, or is it when they're talking about abnormal behavior? And so really analyzing yourself and your curiosities, just to piggyback on what Angie and Jackie said, I think is really important right now. And those are some ways to do it. And as Jackie said, even the small things like what TV shows you watch are indicators.
Awesome. Awesome.
And I would add one simple thing is, really focus on making a strong academic start to your career. Your job right now as a first year is to learn. And there's a lot of different ways that you will learn. But right now, especially with the circumstances we're in, like really focusing on taking advantage of the courses you have. There's no other time in life where you get to just learn for your job. Well, very few anyways. Um, and and you taking advantage of that. Angie mentioned kind of in passing, going to office hours. Like our professors here are a wealth of knowledge. And yes, you can go to office hours to, better understand how maybe you can do better in a course. But getting to know them, our professors have some incredible experiences and they love to talk to students. And we hear from them, they wish students took advantage of their office hours more often. So, paying attention in classes, taking a class that you would never otherwise take, like this is your chance to explore. And through, I think, expanding your curiosity in your coursework, you will be exposed to ideas and people and ways of thinking that will, change how you view the world and potentially your career outcomes. So yeah, make a strong academic showing.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you all. Kind of piggybacking off of what Beth just said, right? There are a lot of questions about how to navigate the pre-professional culture at Georgetown. And I was sitting in a panel the other day when one of the panelists said, you can only do two things well, right? And one of them is to be a student right now, right? But we know since we've been here for a semester, at least so far, right, that the Georgetown culture tends to be do everything at once, right? So one of the questions that popped up was like, how do you navigate the pre-professional culture at Georgetown? And I'm curious with all of you, how would you even describe that pre-professional culture or the career culture at Georgetown? And have you seen students navigate it well? Or how have you seen them navigate it well?
Yeah, I can speak to that quickly as just coming off of being a student and being in that pre-professional culture. I think one of the downfalls of having many high achieving students in one community is that there seems to be this sort of guise of how everyone is achieving all the time. And I kind of touched on this in my last question. And I think for me personally, that really would make me sort of second guess myself of like, am I doing the right thing? If everybody's doing consulting, like, should I be doing consulting? Should I be going into these paths that 100 people are walking around campus in suits for? And I think, that constant guise of everyone's doing the most all the time was very distracting for me. But I think that those are the most apparent voices on Georgetown's campus pre-professional wise, but they aren't the only ones, and they're not the only answer to your questions about career. And I think what helped me was just recognizing that I was on a different path and really had no desire to go into consulting or business, just based off of my personal preference and values, and just making sure that I was confident in myself and my reflections, beyond what everybody else was doing. So kind of like staying in my own lane.
Awesome. Thanks. Jody, Jackie, do you guys have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Of course, my area is the arts, which is, it's a strong but passionate group here. So when I have students come to see me, if I'm hearing a lot of them with shoulds, like I feel like I should, it's always kind of like a bell. It's like, okay, well, what's the should here? And I think it is tough. Right now you're not on campus, but if you see a bunch of people going in one direction in a bunch of suits, you think maybe I should be going in one direction in my suit, right? That's the way it should be. And again, the should. So we start unpacking, like, what does that should look like? What does that mean to you? And I think the folks that have, I think, done, when I say done it well, is that they've remained committed to that process of reflecting back on the things that have meant the most to them. You know, what is it? What is the core me? Like, what does that look like? And so students, I think, that have not gotten caught up in that have been able to kind of continue reflecting on what are the things that are important to me. And that could be many things. Like I always tell my students, like, you're in the center of this wheel, and it could be geographical location. Sometimes it's important. Sometimes it's finance. Sometimes it's who you are. Sometimes it's all of these things. So I think it's always reflecting back and thinking, um, who is this core part of me, and where is that best served? And so that's part of our job to help walk through that process. But I would say shoulds. If you're saying a lot of shoulds, that's an indication that perhaps you're not going in the direction. But we'll let someone else kind of riff on that.
Yeah, I would just add that part of it is going to be, frankly, just sitting in your discomfort and being okay with that. You know, I think about a student that I had. She thought she was interested in finance, and she interned at Goldman Sachs. And Goldman Sachs, you know, is it. And so she felt like she had hit her peak. She'd hit her peak in her career in some ways, and she didn't like it, and she didn't know what to do, and she really struggled. And but she didn't go back to finance, you know, because that was more comfortable. She sat with the discomfort. She tried to figure it out. She went on a few adventures and spoke to faculty and alumni, and she did all of these things to, you know, keep exploring. And now she works at Palantir, because she decided she was interested in tech, and works in their like civil liberties, kind of like tech policy arena. But it was really uncomfortable for her for a while. And I think it may be for you as well if you're choosing something different. And so just to be okay with that and try to sit with that discomfort so that you can really do you, you know, you do you.
Yeah, I love that, Jody, when he's just said you do you. I mean, in some ways, the welcome to the rest of life, where it's really easy to always compare yourself to everyone else. Like right now, it might be about internships and joining different clubs on campus, but later on, it'll be based on cars or what your peers are doing in their careers, or houses, and, you know, whatever different things are out there that are deemed in your eyes success. And that's the big thing, is to understand that success looks different. And, you know, your unique definition of success may be different than the person next to you. You know, maybe you're paying your way through Georgetown and you've got to get internships that pay. And, you know, you maybe need to get a job on campus, or, you know, you're going to work at, you know, go work at the Tombs and like count on those tips at the end of the night to help you pay your bills. You're going to have a different set of considerations than the person next to you, who maybe doesn't have to worry about money and can take an unpaid internship that might be more glamorous. So just consider that, you know, everybody's definition of success is always going to be different than yours. And, you know, rely upon the people close to you, and, you know, the people who know you well to help you stay grounded. The other thing I would say is being the government advisor. I know a lot of you came to Georgetown for the specific purpose of like wanting to be in the action and, you know, maybe thinking of politics or government as part of your career. And I think to that end, I would say one mistake I see is students are afraid to go into the city. And you may laugh because you're probably all like at home right now being like, I want to be in DC, but we see so many students who like don't leave the hilltop. And there are so many wonderful opportunities, whether we're talking about like volunteering and working with the Centers for Social Justice and like the DC Reads program, or, you know, actually doing an internship, or even just taking advantage of like, oh my gosh, you've got the Smithsonian's and they do all this like amazing free programming. You have think tanks that have programs like every day of the week that you can just show up to as a member of the public. Like you can go sit in on congressional hearings if you want, if you don't have class. Like these are all things that I would encourage when you all do come back to campus, like get off campus a little bit, like go see, like take advantage of what the city has to offer. And that too can help guide, like, you know, what your interest is. Like you might go sit in on a hearing in Congress and be like, oh my gosh, this is the most boring thing ever. There's no way I want to do this for the rest of my life. So you're like, okay, so I'm not going to go for that Hill internship because this is boring. Or you might have the opposite reaction where you're just like, this is awesome. I love this. I want more. So, you know, taking advantage of what's out there in the city and getting off the hilltop, I think is something I wish more students did.
Awesome. Thank you both.
Oh, Maddie, I don't
Yeah,
know.
go ahead.
I don't know if this will come up, but I was thinking as we were talking. I was talking about the shoulds, but there's a part of our website, and I love this. It's called the value. Like, there's a value card sort. I don't know if it's still on there, and I think it is. Okay, so if you Google on our website value cards or sort, this could be kind of a fun game. Of course, I am the creative advisor, so I'm going to tell you to kind of get like your, like print things out and cut them up. But it's basically, if you put the values, you just kind of very quickly kind of get a sense of like, what are the values that are important to you? What are the values that maybe, like they're great values, but they don't resonate. I think no matter what you're doing, you'll get a list of like 10, and then 5, then 3, then 1. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do this, and it's so fun to do with our career exploration team, which I will just say that. So when you do those things, you'll get a sense of like, what is really resonating with me? And again, it will help, to Maddie's original question about the pre-professional piece, is that you go back to these values, and no matter what you do, where you choose, you can always come back and ask, is this in line with what I believe, with my values? So I think it doesn't matter what you do. So I love the story of Jody's, where the Goldman to the Palantir, it didn't resonate. Like, it didn't, like those core things just didn't resonate with her. So, but she just made that slight adjustment, and it did. So love the value card sort. But big fan of that.
No, I think that's a really good point, Jackie, because it makes me think about when we're comparing ourselves to our peers, we're making decisions based out of fear and not decisions that are leaning into our values, right? And so if we're able to clarify what those values are and then start like making our decisions that lean towards those things or bring us closer to feeling aligned with those values, we'll feel better in ourselves. We'll have less anxiety. We'll feel more aligned. We'll feel like we're on our right path, right? And so that's definitely a really good plug for the values. And this idea of like, when I'm leaning towards like, oh my gosh, everybody is doing X, right? And if I decide to do X, am I doing that out of fear, or am I doing that because I really truly am engaged in this thing and really want to do this thing? So great plug. Love that.
Yeah, and I've, if I may interrupt for a moment, I've heard from some upperclassmen, especially right now with coronavirus going on and everybody's away from campus. I've had a few of them remark how it's made it easier because they're Zoom fatigued. They can't do all their student group activities. So it's almost forced them to really only do what they truly want to do, because they, one, can't do it all, and two, you don't actually see what people are doing. You don't see the flyers on campus. You don't see the chalking. You don't, have the whispers at the beginning of class about what people are doing. And I've had quite a few of them remark that like, that has been something that they've appreciated during this time, is the ability to do what Maddie just said, like the things that you really want to do. So yeah, just keep that in mind as we move towards, at some point coming back to campus,
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some things that we can pull back from this experience and hold on to that might be beneficial into the next piece. So kind of leaning into that, right? Like in the survey that we put out, there were a lot of questions about how to increase self-confidence, both in your personal selves and also within your career and opportunities that are out there. Do you have any advice on how students can feel more prepared or more confident to take on professional roles? And how did you do this maybe in your own career journey?
Yeah, I can start. So one of the more pivotal moments for me in terms of gaining confidence in my career were what we call stretch projects, stretch assignments. So I was in the career office, and the director came to me and asked if I would want to evaluate our office according to CAS standards. I had no idea what CAS standards were, what that would look like, and it would definitely not have been something I would have volunteered for because I didn't have the confidence to do it. And and then I did it, and it was great, and I really learned that I can take something that's ambiguous and something I don't know about and make it something. So my thought to you is, how can you find stretch projects and assignments? So if you have like a volunteer or an internship, like asking your supervisor for such things, or even in your own time, like how can you challenge yourself to take a Python, course on LinkedIn Learning, or in your class, instead of doing the easy assignment, do the one that's harder, if you give it an option. So I would just say, like, challenge yourself with those stretch projects, because that's when you're really going to grow.
Oh, Maddie, I was trying to think through the answer to this, and I love Jody's like stretch projects. Like, I love that answer because it wasn't me at all. When I think I came in as a freshman, it's funny because we work together, so we have similarities and we have differences, and that's it. I was like, oh, a stretch project. That's amazing. I remember when I came to campus, so to my campus, I was a working class girl, went to a private school, and I was just really overwhelmed. I think a lot in the beginning, and that wasn't, I'm trying to think, like, not necessarily scary, but just it was overwhelming. There was just a lot culturally for me to kind of figure out and do. And I found my confidence came from my work study job, actually, that I was in the library and I just really loved it. I loved working with the people there. And it was, I found my people. I found my people. And that was just a small thing. So it wasn't for me, it wasn't a stretch project, which I love it. And that's something now that I might be like, ooh, that's interesting. But back then, it was finding my people and doing something that I don't know, like I learned a lot of skills. I have a degree in social work, but I also have a degree in library science. So clearly I used it, later in the line. So, and that's what gave me confidence, is finding my people and kind of getting culturally more settled. So that's part of when we tell freshmen, don't worry, you don't have to do it all at once. I mean, for some students, like, this cultural adjustment is huge. And for me, it was big. So it took a bit of time before I was even in the thinking space in terms of experience, but I was getting so much great experience by working my work study job and finding my people. So I'll leave that there.
Just to add on to that though, like when I think about college, like what was my stretch project that really, really comes back to me was studying abroad. Grew up in a small town. I never had to make friends, and so that was life changing for me. So, maybe it will be for you, maybe not, but also highly recommend something like that. Talk about taking yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, so when I think back to college, so I love learning. So when I went to a big state university, so like I come on campus and there's like 40,000 people, and it takes you like 20 minutes to cross or more from one end of campus to the other, and you only have 10 minutes to do it in between classes. That was interesting. But I remember loving college, and I, like many of you maybe, really wanted to do stuff in international affairs, international relations. I was an anthropology major. I took poli-sci courses. And at some point, I remember I was taking an intro to Buddhism course just because I was like, I can never do this. This is so cool. And they were talking about a study abroad in Tibet. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. That's like literally as far away from home as I can go. Like, this is literally the other side of the world, like, and really unique. I'm going to go do it because no one else is doing it. And that was kind of my motto, is like, if everybody was doing something in college or reading something, I was like, I am not going to do that. I'm not going to watch that TV show. So I was a little bit of a rebel in that way. So, and I had seen myself doing Peace Corps and going on to the Department of State and wanting to be Secretary of State by the time I was 40, 45 at the latest. Like, that was my goal. And so I did this study abroad program, and it was one of the hardest experiences of my life. It was so different. And what I saw, it was at one time incredibly amazing and beautiful, and incredibly disheartening, and really questioned a lot of my values. And so when I came back from that thing, it was my senior year. So I'm closing in on graduation. Have almost all my degree requirements. And all of a sudden I remember feeling like, I don't want to do State Department. I don't want to be in the Foreign Service. Like, I missed home so much that I'm like, I don't want to be away for like 3 or 4 years at a time. What do I do? Like, this is what I've been thinking about since high school. Like, I don't want to do Peace Corps. Like, third world countries are like, it's really, really hard and really, really lonely when you don't speak the language. Like, and I had a real crisis. I got depressed, and I started acting out in stupid ways. And I remember a couple things kind of helped me recognize it. One was I did seek out help. So I knew that I was needing help, and I sought out help in ways where I could use it. So like if you're ever in a spot where you're like, what do I do? And, how can I, adapt to things that are changing as like the ground is changing underneath you as you're standing. I went to CAPS, and I remember seeking out helps from CAPS. And also at that point, I had a few professors who I knew well, who I really remember having frank conversations with, and started to discover a new path that, I wasn't going to be able to fully follow it in college because I was at that point my senior year and graduating. And I remember just kind of picking myself up by my bootstraps and saying like, okay, so this career path that I thought I was going to do forever, I'm not going to do because I just don't think it's healthy for me. Okay, so what am I going to do? Okay, well, I'm going to finish my degree because that's what I'm here to do, and I'm very close. So I'm going to do the best I can to finish that out. And then I started to reach out. I started to, talk to my professors about other opportunities and career advisors. And I ended up taking a different path than I ever thought I would do. And looking at the time, it was very clouded. So I just kind of focused on like, putting one step in front of the other. And, where you guys are, and whether it's now or when you're looking to graduate, like you can't see the full arc of your life. All you can see, it's like when you're walking on a path in the dark in the middle of the woods and you have a flashlight, you can only see like a few steps in front of you. So you just continue on with what you can. And you try not to worry about what's beyond you. And as you continue on, the path will become clearer. And, now I can look back at my career now 15, 20 years out of school and say, oh, so yeah, okay, now I'm seeing like where this all is starting to make sense. And, so yeah, taking advantage, reaching out for help if you need it, whether that's from friends or the things that we have on campus, and kind of going way back to like what Jody was saying at the very beginning, like sitting in your discomfort and being okay in that discomfort, and not trying to just like muscle through it, and recognizing that at times in life there are just going to be different circumstances that require you to reevaluate. And that really is like, you hear about adulting, like a lot of adulting is just realizing, okay, what I'm doing right now isn't working anymore, so what do I need to shift, and being okay with that.
Angie, do you have anything to add to this idea of how to build some confidence around your professional identity?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that what Beth just said was really powerful. And I went through uh, a a shift as well in college, and I think it's more common than I thought it was when I was a Georgetown student, of like coming in really powerful and super on, like, I know exactly what I'm going to do, I have this plan, and then completely shifting. But before I got to that, I think where I originally found my confidence was, as Beth mentioned, like reaching out to the professors that I felt that I trusted a lot. I started out, I was a psych major at Georgetown, and I started out being really, really passionate and intending on doing research. I think that research is there's a lot of value in the Georgetown culture around research. And with that, I was really scared. I didn't know what it was. I didn't think I had the aptitude for it because I was a freshman that had no experience. But when I talked with my professor, and she sort of like broke down what psychology labs actually do and what they're looking for, I was like, oh, I did that when I worked an administrative job for a company back home before I started college. And so even though didn't have the like prestigious research title, I realized that I did, Excel entries, even though it wasn't the same topic as psych research. I had that experience. And understanding that when you do want to make that shift, like say you want to get involved in something that you didn't do at all in high school, or something like that, or even down the line, like what Beth was mentioning, when you kind of want to shift subject matters in the middle of college, you can still lean on the skills that you've gotten from other experiences and use that to your benefit. And even like if you had a food service job in high school, those types of customer service, working with difficult people, teamwork skills are super, super valuable that a lot of people might not even have if they're so focused on, I need a Hilternship, I need to work in all these different areas, and they don't have like the customer service experience that you would get from working at a restaurant. Finding confidence in the things that you've already done and harnessing that into how you tell your story for the positions you want to go into, I think is where I gained the most confidence.
Awesome, thanks. It sounds like the general line of advice there was kind of put yourself outside your comfort zone because that's where you'll grow, right? But then don't be afraid to source information, skills, and strengths from your previous experiences to help you out in these uncomfort areas, which is great. Thank you all. So kind of, again, like piggybacking off of that just a little bit, a lot of the questions that popped up in the survey were about like, how do you know when you found the one, right? And not talking about a romantic partner, but talking about the right career path for you. Really viewing careers as, I choose one thing and then that's it. I'm there for life. If I make the wrong choice, my life is going downhill from here. So what would you maybe say to a student who's worried about being able to find that perfect path for them? And how might you help a student pivot if necessary? And I know we touched on this a little bit here and there in some of the other questions, but any advice or any thoughts about that?
I would just say quickly that I don't believe that there's like one soulmate career for every person. I think a lot of people can do many different things and even have multiple interests that they can flourish in. Making a shift is completely normal. In fact, honestly, more the norm these days. I think that you'll find it to be much more rare to have had one career path. Even just looking at the panels here of everybody who has spent much more time in the professional world than I have. All of you have had shifts in your careers that have been positive, like being able to dip into one industry and still not feel like you're falling behind when you shift, but that you can use what you had to propel you forward. So I understand the fear, because I was recently there, of feeling like if I switch paths, I'm going to be behind, or I'm going to take longer to get where I need to go. And I think that that's kind of a misconception of how career works. There are certain things, like if you want to be an astrophysicist, there are certain, degrees that you need to get, but a lot of other things are pretty malleable in the career world. So you can use, one type of degree like my psych, I can use my psych degree in the career space. And that can kind of, it gives you a lot more license to kind of form your career path as you go and use that trial and error to inform you. So it's both exciting and definitely scary too, but possible.
Awesome. Thanks, Angie. Jody, I'm curious your response to this, since you work a lot with the pre-med students. Have you worked with any students who are really going through doing pre-med, like they've wanted to be a doctor since they were 14, and all of a sudden in junior year something comes and they're like, nope, this isn't for me? How would you maybe advise that student?
It never happens. It never happens, Maddie. Yeah, I think that making a career decision when you're 8 years old or you're 14 years old, like it's not realistic. And I do think there are some people who decide they want to be a doctor at 14, or they're pre-med at 20, and that actually comes to fruition. But I don't have any data to back this up. But if you were to talk to 20 people in their 40s and ask them if this is what they thought they were going to do when they were a first-year student in college, maybe one would say yes. So I think again, it's sitting with that discomfort. I even in high school, so I was, and even early college, I thought I was going to be a psychologist, and I really wanted to be a psychologist. And that was a path over several years, and I did do informational interviews. I talked with people, and I got a master's degree, and I got another career, and then I still thought, no, I want to be a psychologist. And so I got into a doctorate of psych degree, and I realized like 6 months into it, no, I'm not interested in this. And, I could go down this path and I could do this for 5 more years, or I can just cut it loose. So I cut it loose, and I realized, we can go into this another time, but, but it was, in some ways I was happy I got to really understand that that wasn't what I wanted to do, but certainly it took a long time to realize that. So it's a cliche, but it's the journey, not the destination. And it's a cliche, but it's a good one. And it's really true when it comes to career.
Great, thank you. Beth, Jackie, anything to add in that space of
I would
pivoting?
say, yeah, going back to your values, like, I don't think there is a perfect job. There may be a ideal job at a specific point in time. And by that I mean, you're gonna have different needs at different points in your life. Like I hinted at this before, maybe you're a breadwinner for your family. And so coming out of college, you're gonna need a job that pays well. And you're going to make certain decisions so that you can obtain a job that pays well. So, you can help send a younger brother or sister to school or help pay the bills. Or maybe maybe there's family situations, maybe somebody's ill, maybe you need to be closer to home, so you might want to be in like New York or DC, but life is going to require that you be closer to home wherever that is. We're kind of facing that right now. Like a lot of people don't want to be where they are, but they have to be because of everything that's going on. And I'm seeing that a lot with like the international field, where typically people are flying all around the globe trying to help consult with like major multinational organizations, and that's just not happening right now. And so people are making different decisions. And so I think you always want to think about, there's a lot of different parts of a job. There's the practical, like you at some point, maybe now, maybe in the future, there's a thing called money that you do need to pay your bills, to pay for your cell phone, to buy food, at some point, maybe, to provide for a family. And so you're going to need that. You also have, the stuff that you're good at or that you like to do. And like we've been talking, that may change over time. And then you also have too, what I have found that we don't often talk about is the people that you work with. So you may love the work that you do, you may like where you are, you may enjoy the benefits and the pay, but man, I tell you, having a bad boss, it can totally break a job. And I've had my experiences with amazing bosses and bad bosses. And having a bad boss or having a bad office environment, even if it's at your dream organization, can change things. So I think just being willing to recognize that it's a lot of different, there's a lot of different ways to look at a job and whether or not it's the ideal, and it's going to change over time. So like I have 2 young kids under 5. So right now, being able to have a job that's flexible, that isn't maybe always as intense as some other jobs. Like I've worked in jobs that are 60, 80 hours a week where I'm like on for 60 or 80 hours a week. Right now in my life, that's not realistic, and so I'm making different choices than I might have 5 years ago, or maybe that I will make 5 years coming from now. And so just being realistic about like the definition of perfect for yourself is going to change, and just recognizing that.
Yeah, the definition of perfect and the definition of success, right, is different depending on where we are. And back to Jackie's values, right? Like your values are going to shift and change over time. And so something that might be valuable to you right now might not be the same way, or might grow or change into something else moving down the line. Jackie, a specific question for you, kind of along the same lines that we're talking about. There were a lot of questions, and I would imagine you get this a lot with your creative arts um, individuals, where, oh my gosh, I really want to lean into this thing that's my passion. I want to be an author. I want to do X. I want to do this. But I'm really scared to follow my dream because I also really value financial security. So how might you work with a student that's struggling between those 2 values, right? Like passion, purpose, excitement, fun, interest versus finances?
You know, I would say, like, since we're talking to a group of first years, I would say embrace all of that. At the moment, if this is what you love to do, then do it. Like do it freshman, sophomore, all of that. And if you're thinking as a first year, should I be really putting my efforts and my passions into the things I care about? Yes, please do that. As you move forward, I think a lot of times the question then is, it depends what parts of the arts that you're really interested in. If it's a really truly a creative space, then maybe we're talking about, okay, you're a comedian, you do stand up, okay, so I'm really passionate about that. What does that look like? Oh, it's a lot of nights. Okay. So do you need to write during the daytime? Yeah, I think I might need to write during the daytime. So if you're writing during the daytime, if you want to perform at night, then what do we have in terms of, needing to make money? What does that look like? And sometimes there are sacrifices, but at the moment, when I'm thinking of first years, I'm not, it's almost like making you think as a junior and senior, when right now I'm just like, do that performance, do that stand up, go for the things that, because you're going to start finding if you do that, those passion projects, if that's something that remains almost like a hobby, you're like, this is cool, I really love doing it, or whether or not something you're like, dude, this is central to who I am. It's like, I need this. So it's a lot of it is I'm just speculating at the moment. So you could very well, like if I see you when you're a sophomore, junior, you could say, yes, I love doing comedy, but on the side, so Jackie, let's talk about all these other fabulous skills I have. And we'll talk about, playing in that area. Again, another person might come in and say, no, I want to do it for my career. Well, then we're going to have some discussions about like, what does that look like? That might mean that you're taking a job that is not a Georgetown looking job in order to support your creative environment, which is writing and doing your work at night. Maybe we're talking about like, how many years do you want to put into that before you change, before you do something else in the industry that's not the creative piece. So there's so many questions, but I would say as a first year, almost like it's too much for me to even, you can't even fathom this yet. It's too hard to even start asking those questions. And don't put that pressure on you. If you feel like there's a passion you want to pursue, you got to do it. Of course, do it with your work. This is all about like putting your effort into your courses and all of that stuff. So be a great, Georgetown academic student, but do the passion. And then later on, see me and we'll work through what does that look like to you? If that remains something that's just a core part of you that you will always do, or whether it is central to who you are, and then how do we balance that? So hard answer, maybe not any easy answer, but right now just pursue it, love it. Don't question whether or not you're going to be a choreographer in 2-3 years. Just do it because you love it.
I will add something that I actually learned more from working in the career space. I think when I was coming into Georgetown, I thought very very strictly about what different majors led to different jobs. So like if I was going to be an art major, I had to be a fine artist. But there are things like, for example, Jackie told me about how a lot of art history majors go into like auction houses and museums. And so, those are still creative industries that are still going to give you a good, decent salary to live in DC, New York, things like that. That isn't just, I'm going to be, a fine artist that paints all day. And you really have to think about how the sacrifices you want to make. So there are a lot of ways to still be financially secure, but be in creative industries or be in industries that you find passionate about. And that's something that I learned. I had no idea what auction houses were until literally this summer. So you keep learning.
Awesome. Great. Thanks. Well, I want to open it up to questions from the group. So anyone, if you have any questions for our panelists here, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask away. You can also submit it to the chat if that feels more comfortable, and I can read it too.
I joined a little bit late, so apologies if this has already been discussed. But as freshmen, I think I enjoyed hearing about sort of the broader ideas of how we should be approaching employment, being in the career space. What are sort of the smaller little day-to-day steps that we can take to be at a point in senior year where we feel like we have a sort of a direction?
One thing that I did a lot was going on my little like research escapades online. So whether that's like deciding I love A24, the film company, and then looking at A24 and looking at the people maybe on LinkedIn who work there, and just kind of like deciding if I like something and then using Google to find out more about the career. Something that's a little bit more of a step above the everyday search is reaching out to people for what we call informational interviews. So that can be people that maybe you have the connection of you both went to Georgetown and you found them on LinkedIn. Or maybe it's just someone who works in a company that you're really interested in and you send them a quick note saying, hi, I'm a Georgetown student, I'm a college student interested in this. Would love to hear about, your career journey. I did that a lot, like a lot every year of college. And, it allows you the time to take like a half an hour to be curious about the world that this person is in without having to get an internship in that career space, without having to take a full course on that. And that allowed me to kind of dip into a day in the life of what a career would be in those specific spaces. So online internet research is what worked for me.
I have two suggestions. So you know how in your classes right now you have about 2 to 5 people that speak out and talk in class? Be one of those 2 to 5. So if you ever think you want to go to grad school, those professors are going to remember you. They like you. You make their jobs easier. They appreciate it profoundly, and they will remember you, and they will want to help you, whether that's help explore your career or write a letter of reference or recommendation. So highly recommend that you participate in class. The second thing is to not get hung up on the word internship. So I need an internship, but how can you get a meaningful experience that will help you explore your interests, your values, and skills, and all of these things that we're talking about? So for example, like maybe you're interested in global health. Okay, well, what if you volunteered with a refugee organization that helps them get settled in the US and helps them adjust? That would be a great, meaningful experience that you can do that may just be as meaningful as an internship. So try to start, volunteering and get those experiences in that way and not get hung up on the term internship.
And I would add to Jody, and I said this earlier, like professor office hours or graduate student office hours. I have a kind of a funny anecdote. My freshman year, I took like intro to poli-sci, which at Michigan was like a 1,000-person course, like big course. And I was in the honors section. So I thought I was pretty cool. Here I'm like a smart kid, and I walk in, and I remember my first term paper with this GSI, this graduate student instructor who was helping actually do all the grading, because a normal professor can't grade 1,000 papers. It's just impossible. And I thought I was a good writer, and I got my paper back and there was a giant D- on it. And like, I'm not kidding, half the paper was just covered in red ink. And this guy excoriated me, and I was so distraught. And I remember being like, I have to go talk to this man because I can't have anything other than an A+ on my report card, or I'm not going to be able to like go do the things I want to do. And so I went in with the purpose of, wanting to improve my grade. And then I just remember talking to this person, and I met with this GSI multiple times over the semester. And then further on in my Michigan career, like I kept on meeting with this person because they were so helpful in really helping me hone my craft of writing. But then also we would just talk about other stuff going on and career things. And even once I graduated and this person went on to become a professor, like we've stayed in touch over the years, and he still is one of these people that I call upon when I either need a hard dose of reality or I'm looking for someone to help with like professional things. And lo and behold, I come to Georgetown, and guess who's a professor at SFS? This old graduate instructor of mine. And so, you just never know like how life works out. And, this person helped me actually, even in my job at Georgetown, kind of, he has the inside scoop on like what's going on at SFS. And he's someone as a peer now that I can talk to and get advice on still in my career. And that just started by going to their office hours. So yeah, using your office hours. Also, if you all aren't already, you should get a career newsletter from the Colley Center every week that comes on like usually Sunday or Monday. But if you go down to the bottom of that where it says update your preferences, you can sign up for all the industry newsletters. So like I have one, Jody has one, Jackie has one, there's a business one, there's a pre-law one. Sign up for those newsletters. Thank you, Maddie. She just put the link in there. And just read them. Some of it's not going to be appropriate necessarily for you as first years. Maybe it's more for like juniors or seniors, but you can kind of get a sense of like what's going on in some of these fields, and just take that information right now and like file it away for maybe like a year or two from now. So yeah, office hours, newsletters, 2 simple, easy steps.
Lastly, I will just pop in and say the student club application process I really find really interesting. And I think that is really like just one step, because usually what you come into Georgetown with is either a very long resume that you have applied with, and you come into drop-ins. And if you haven't done it, I would suggest doing it, even if you're not applying to a student club, but you could start getting a sense of, once you're tailoring the resume for a club, what are the things that really speak to you? So you're applying to this club for a reason, because it's something that you care about, and you have to take this gigantic resume, this unwieldy resume, and tighten it up. And so you really get to kind of start seeing what are the things that that you've actually done that make you super relevant for this particular club. So sometimes it helps you kind of understand like, oh, this is really important to me. And by the way, I have been doing it all along. So sometimes just that act of kind of going over your resume and cleaning it up for, say, a student club is incredibly informative about like, oh, I've actually been doing this and I hadn't realized it.
Awesome. Thank you all. We probably have about time for one more question. If anyone else has a question they'd like to pose to the group, feel free again. And Max, thank you for your question.
Sure. So I guess my question is like, what do you think we should think about? And like, I guess, it's November of the fall semester. What should we look into, I guess, for the spring and then the summer?
Great question. Who wants to jump on this one?
I'll take a hit. I guess it kind of depends what you want to do, so I suppose that's always a question. Like, what are you thinking about? Is there something are you looking at your spring semester and you're like, wow, the classes are not enough and I've got all this time, if you're thinking you have to do something, there is no spring. I will say with a caveat, there's very little spring have-tos in the career world. There might be a few things in each industry, but very little. I think my first question would be like, what is it that you want to do? And if it's like, I'm really passionate about, say, nonprofits, I really love exploring this, then I probably would say, okay, well, let's see what it is. What does that look like? Is that an experience you can get on campus? Is that something that you have time to volunteer? Is that something maybe in the summer in terms of an internship? So I would say it starts with that question, and might require a little bit more of a one-on-one depending on what it is that you want to do.
Yeah, I would say come to the Career Center, come to drop-ins, schedule a career exploration appointment is really great for first year students, because you can just sit with an advisor one-on-one and there's no like requirement. You don't have to have things prepared. You could like bring in your resume if you want, or you could just sit and talk and say, this is what I'm thinking. How do we feel, and work through it there. Using the space to kind of discern your next steps is really great.
Yeah, and I would just echo, like, I think signing up for the newsletter is a great way to just see even what's possible. Like, what is the Career Center doing that's, related to my interests? Like Beth was saying, to sign up for the newsletter. Again, like thinking about like your curiosities and where might I want to, volunteer, get some kind of meaningful experience for summer. And then there's so much happening on campus, but there's so many student groups and so many cool things. I think about like, for my health students that, there's Globe Med and there's, Center for Social Justice. And I think just like learning the landscape of what's on campus and all that you can do to get meaningful experience and build connections, that's a lot right there. I mean, you could spend your entire spring doing that before you start looking externally.
Yeah, I think I would add on to that too. Explore our website as well. Like there are so many good resources on there where you can either learn about yourself or learn about what's out there in terms of career, that you can kind of gather some knowledge and some information. And luckily, Jody, Jackie, and Beth added or created these wonderful industry guides. So if you find yourself falling into any of their industries, without even talking to them, you could go to their industry guide and learn all about these different careers and what they look like and how to get more information. And we have a resource called Vault that you can jump into and really rabbit hole into a lot of information that way. And so just take a little bit of time and peruse our website. And if you need some help kind of navigating it, feel free to make a career exploration appointment too. And we're happy to walk you through that, because there are a lot of resources that are available to you as students.
And I will say, just on a very practical note, like from the employment sector, spring, most places are still looking at virtual internships. Summer remains to be seen. I'm giving it a 50-50 chance that places are bringing interns in this summer, depending on how everything goes with the virus. So Brandon, like from a practical perspective, like if you're interested in looking at experiences, look locally. Like, you know, are there groups where like you can volunteer? Like, do you have an elderly neighbor that needs help getting groceries every week, that, you know, they don't want to go out to the grocery stores, but you feel like you're in a position where you can do that? Or, you know, like I know my city has a listserv just for volunteering, and they post every week like different ways you can volunteer. We're getting into the holidays, so it's like, how can we help folks who are less fortunate during a time of year when usually there's a lot of activities going on to help, but now they're looking at it differently. So like, you know, looking, you know, hyper local to like, what are different things that you're interested in, or where do you see a need in your community that you can help fill right now? And it doesn't have to be anything grand. Like I've, again, as like a young parent, I know so many parents right now who would love to have like a college student come help them out with their like grade school kids, to like just oversee them while they're doing their schoolwork online, so that the mom or the dad can like go and work. And, you know, looking for things like that are wonderful ways to like give back to your community, which again, if you're looking in the world of public service, like being able to like give back to your community is something big. But it doesn't have to be like this grand policy project. It can be, you know, just meeting the needs in your backyard.
And I just would want to add, like, if you're interested in business and any sort, I mean, a lot of nonprofits, that's what they're looking for often, is like marketing and social media and communication help. Or like, even like, let's say you're tech, like there's still things you can do that's tech related that is volunteering as well. So it's not like, you know, I might not be interested in teaching kids, right? Because that's not my thing. There's the opportunities are vast, and you can always talk with one of us about it if you want to explore that more.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you to everyone who joined. If you have any additional questions, I'm sure you can, again, like Jody was just saying, you can make an appointment with us. I also just put my net ID in the chat, so you can email your questions to me and I can disseminate them across the group if necessary. But yeah, so thank you again for coming, and let us know if you have anything that pops up.